Welcome in. This is your Jock Market Power Hour for this week's Farmers Insurance Open. I'm Rick Gaiman, that right there, Joe Idoni. And Joe, I'm confused. It's Tuesday, my friend.
What's up, man? I'm just tweeting out the link here because we were a little bit behind on some of our normal everything, I guess, today, as it felt like Tuesday and Wednesday were kind of merged together this week. Tweeting out the link to the show. Hope you guys can come and join us, and we're excited to run this the next 45 minutes down on a Tuesday.
On a Tuesday, if you have not figured it out by now, this golf tournament starts on Wednesday morning, and you are probably helpless at this point because it has been the one thing I've said it 900 times. Everyone is trying to raise the alarms, but a Wednesday to Saturday start, which shortens the turnaround time. We'll get a longer turnaround time next week. But I mean, does it impact the guys that we might want to be investing in who played last week? I know they didn't travel very far, but there's one day less preparation.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to really for me to factor that in and play things any differently. It's a little bit different in terms of trying to analyze and do your normal research and analysis for the week because you have a little bit less time to prepare. But in terms of the impact I think it's going to have on whether a player plays well this week or doesn't play well, the extra day I don't think is going to play a huge factor.
I agree with you. I just wanted to get your take on it. But I absolutely agree. I don't think it really matters one bit, especially because the travel was very, very quick from the California desert to Southern California. Okay, here's what we're going to do. The next 45 minutes or so is the most critical moments of the Jock Market for this week's golf cash market. We are in the IPO phase, which means that you are now able to bid on shares of golfers. And if you're one of the high bidders when this market closes right around 9 p.m. Eastern time, then those shares are going to be allocated to you. And then you'll have an opportunity to trade them over the course of the event, or you can buy more shares, or you can short shares now. And then with the guaranteed payouts, Joe, that's what we're all playing for. So that is how we cash this thing out in 4 days' time. Those guaranteed payouts for every position on the board.
Yep, the structure now has been the same, I believe, since the Sony in terms of how many spots pay out and exactly what they pay out. So another full field event, we get back to the standard sort of 2-day cut line this week versus the 3 last week. Still kind of a unique situation with the 2-course setup those first 2 days. I know that you're very familiar with Torrey Pines. Got any insight on how this thing, I guess, generally plays or anything different this week we can expect?
Yeah, the good thing about Torrey Pines is that it is a very consistent setup. There are places like that on the PGA Tour where it's the same time of year. It's the superintendent sets it up the same way. You get generally the same type of field. That's what you get at Torrey Pines. So that thick Kikuyu rough on the south course and the Poana greens that we're going to see for 3 out of the 4 rounds, and par will often be a very good score around here. So I can't imagine we are going to get the birdie fests outside of maybe some low scores on the north side, but that's only going to account for 25% of the rounds, Joe. Otherwise, this should be a pretty stout test.
Yeah, totally agree there. I know you've played it as well. Well, it's interesting where this falls on the schedule, I always feel like, because it feels like a drastic turn from what you see leading into this event typically, particularly through the fall where you generally have your shorter coastal Bermuda grass course setups around 7 to 7,200 yards, very short wedge fest, like you mentioned, birdie fest. You have tournament, you have the sort of Hawaii swing, which is some slight dog legs on holes, but generally pretty reasonable fairways and not a long course. And then you show up to Torrey Pines and the south course kind of hits you right in the mouth at 7,700 yards, narrow fairways, hard to hit greens. It's really a different test. So it's interesting when you kind of are generating, your research and analysis based on, say, the last 12, 24, 36 rounds played. You're looking at a lot of courses that aren't that similar to what we're going to see this week.
Yeah, pretty good point there, Joe. If you want to get in on the action, couple of ways to do it. If you want to deposit, use the code POWER. That's up to a $50 deposit bonus. It's the best bonus that is available. If you want to win a little free cash this evening, very easy to do. Make sure that your Jock Market username is in the chat right now, and I'll go through and I'll give away some money as the course of the evening goes on. But oh boy, Joe, just to kind of put a little reference point in for what we saw last week and how this could break down for this week. It was a penny stock bonanza last week at the American Express because Hudson Swafford won the event. $25 per share was the payout. And I know that the chat, let's see, Brent Harris had 17 shares of old Swaff Daddy.
Brent.
So he made 17 times 21, whatever that is, on Hudson Swafford because Swafford went for $3.33 a share last week. That is one of the larger returns we've seen in quite some time, and there were plenty of them, Joe. Tom Hoagie, Lonto Griffin, Brian Harmon, Lee Hodges, all sold for less than $4.50 a share 1 week ago.
Wow, the top five, 429 was the highest priced guy there. Yeah. Long shot event. We kind of knew it going in. I ended up with a lot of guys at the top of the board, but I was able to sell the majority of those shares very early on when I kind of saw the way this thing was shifting. So I didn't have Patrick Cantlay, who jumped out to that crazy start, and I kind of got the feeling early that it was going to be Cantlay or something crazy. So I was able to sort of unload a lot of the Gooch and the Finau and the Answer shares that I had sort of accumulated during IPO, which is not a bad strategy if you can kind of feel that out to just take a little profit, even if it's 25 to 50 cents a share, and just unload some of that, risk basically that you have in your profile in terms of if you see things shaping up different early.
Speaking of Patrick Cantlay, was very expensive last week, $10.54, still returned a profit, a small one, $11.50. That's a 9% ROI. I've been looking at the markets, Joe, recently. I'd die for a 9% ROI at this point.
Yeah, no kidding. No matter where you have your money right now, 9% ROI.
You're not getting 9% anywhere else but Jock Market. That's the safest place for your money right now.
Yep.
Oh my God. Patrick Cantlay pulls it off. Another good week. John Rahm actually sold for $11.91. He finished at $9 a share. So that's kind of the risk reward, right? When you are paying up for someone who's that expensive. It was nearly a record we saw on John Rahm last week. And even with a pretty decent result, you didn't burn your cash like it would for an outright. You got the majority of it plus some back.
Yeah, it's funny. You just got to kind of look at it in different ways. Like if John Rahm was 5-1 last week, so is he going to win that tournament 1 out of every 5 years in that type of field? Probably, right? But the other 4 times, you lose all your money, right? You go broke. Every one of your dollars that you spend on an outright of them, 80% of those times, you're getting zero back. This week, he has a disappointing week by, I think, his and any other standards of the number 1 player in the world. And you didn't lose too much. What did you lose? 2 something a share. So the upside is still there for a guy to finish well, even when he has a bad week where you're not sort of going bust.
Yep, $2.91 a share is what he lost you last week. And that's a perfect segue into more John Rahm conversation for our brand new segment called Bullish or Bearish. That's where Joe and I go through 4 different golfers and we look at their fair value. We turn that into what they are going to need to finish in the golf tournament to turn you a profit. And we decide whether we are, you guessed it, bullish or bearish on said golfer. Let's just start with Rahm. He's the favorite. It's not really close. He has been phenomenal. I'm not even sure that's a strong enough adjective to describe his play at Torrey Pines over the years. We're setting his fair value at $9.61. Whether you can get him at $9.61 this week, Joe, that's a different conversation. But $9.61 fair value would essentially be asking him to finish 12th or better. Bullish or bearish on John Rahm?
I was wrong last week when I took bullish, but I'm going to go right back to the well again and say bullish on that spot. I don't see him finishing outside the top 12 this week. I know that the field is much stronger. I know this is a much more big-time event, but Torrey Pines is John Rahm's sweet spot. He's able to separate himself on these longer courses from the pack. Like you have Rahm last week and Lee Hodges, and they hit 20 balls from 100 yards, there's not going to be much separation there, even though they're totally different players. You have them both hit them from 200 yards, and John Rahm is going to showcase his ability and his talent level and the gap between him and an average PGA Tour player. That's why I'm more bullish on Rahm this week. I'm going to go bullish.
I will agree with you. I will also take bullish on John Rahm. And I thought that you used a really good word there. You said separate. John Rahm can separate himself from the field. And the way to best separate yourself from the field is to play a more difficult golf course, because that is what we've seen at major championships. We know that it requires complete control of your game in all facets. And there is no arguing that John Rahm is the best player in the world right now, almost nearly across the board. So I agree. I'm going to go with bullish. Now, we nearly saw a record on John Rahm last week. I think, 1191. I think the record's 1251. That's the most expensive he's ever been at Waste Management last year, I believe. Is there a chance we get anywhere close to that tonight?
I don't think so. If we didn't get there last week, I have a hard time thinking we're going to get there this week. I would imagine that he does clear that $9 mark where, his fair value projection is $961. I think we probably get him somewhere in the mid to high $10 range if you want shares around.
All right, next up, bullish or bearish, Jordan Spieth. Very interesting name. Our fair value, $7.48. And you can let us know in the chat whether you're bullish or bearish on these golfers. 748, Joe, asking Jordan Spieth to finish 21st or better. Bullish or bearish?
Oh, I'm going to go bearish. I don't love the course setup for Spieth. I don't love the form. He's lost in 5 of the last 6 contests, and you see the one there, which I believe is the CJ Cup. He was barely a very small gainer. So he's on a sort of downward trajectory and trend, and I don't think this is a get-right spot for Spieth in the current state of his game. I'm going to go bearish. What about you, buddy?
I think we're on the same page again here. Yeah, I'm excited, more excited about Spieth longer term, but even when Spieth is at his best, kind of what we saw last summer, it was still missing a lot of fairways and allowing your irons and wedges to take over. That will be more difficult here, and we also have not really seen that as much. He kind of limped to the finish line of 2021, and I'm wondering how the start's going to be for 2022. So I'm with you. We'll go bearish on Jordan Spieth. Next up, Maverick McNeely. California kid knows how to play on these Poana greens. I'm setting the fair value at $5.10, which is asking McNeely to finish 33rd or better. Bullish or bearish on Maverick McNeely?
I'm bearish, but I tell you what, I don't think the market is. I took an early peek, and he's like inside the top 5. He's already cleared the $5 mark, which we'll get into in a minute. But I'm bearish this week. I just think that's a high mark for him to hit in such a big time field. I'm going to sort of play the percentages and think that he goes under that. What about you?
All right, I'll take the other side. I'll take bullish. The thing that is interesting about McNeely, and you can kind of see it in his Jock Market results, maybe a little bit. This might not be the best illustration of it, but he started his career as a popper. He missed a lot of cuts. Then you'd see him jump up and he'd finish second at Pebble Beach. And then he'd miss a couple cuts and he'd finish, a $14 payout at Heritage. Well, he's starting to get more and more consistent. There is a real art to putting on these Poana greens. I'll be bullish on Mav McNeely to finish inside the top 33, and that would be a fair value of about $5.10 per share. Finally, guy who's won this event. Guy's got a trophy or two on the mantle. Jason Day, $4.03. That is asking him to finish about 41st or better, Joe. Are you bullish or bearish on the Australian Jason Day?
I'm going to go bearish again, man. I know I did. It's 3 out of 4 guys, but
man, you are so lame.
I'm just not seeing it right now with Day. You look at how many markets in a row there that he's lost you money in. It just seems like he's totally searching off the tee. I know that he's going through some pretty transformational swing changes right now as well. This is certainly a get-right spot, you would think, for Day, given his propensity to finish well and a win here in the past. Plus, he's awesome around the green, right? That's where his strength usually lies. And this is a course with the amount of greens in regulation that you're going to hit. being lower than the average tour spot, it's going to require you to get up and down quite a bit, a la what we kind of the mold that we saw Patrick Reed take last year, which is just get it close to the green and scramble your nuts off. But I don't see it for Day this week. I'm going to go bearish.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the saving grace for Jason Day is the history, but he's like not that guy anymore, right? He's not that really strong ball striker and the guy that rolls every single putt in. He still hits the high ball, which I think is important at Torrey Pines, but he's not as long as he used to be. Listen, the guy was awesome for a really long time, and he's going to pop here and there. I just think that people will look at the history and probably overpay for him tonight. So I'll be bearish on Jason Day as well. Tough to say. I hope he proves us wrong. Let me give away a little cash. Okay, here's what happens. If you can be in the chat with your Jock Market username, you can get entered into a draw, just like Matthew did. And now Matthew is $20 richer because we're going to credit his Jock Market account in a couple of business days. Usually takes a couple of days, Matthew. Give us some time there. But congratulations, you are on the board. Be like Matthew. Enter your Jock Market username in the chat right now. I've got more money to give away. You can also use the code POWER up to a $50 deposit bonus. We're giving away free cash, people. Let's do it. I'm about to unveil the big board, Joe.
See it.
Have you been peeking? Do you have any idea how the market's shaping up at the moment?
I peaked early on. Rom was up top as expected. Then after that, things were a little bit jumbled. But as we typically see, those things even out and sort of, the cream will rise as we get closer and closer to 9 p.m. here.
A live look at the Jock Market shows Jon Rahm is not only at the top of the board, but he is already $9.77 a share. For those of you tuning in at home, he needs to finish 12th or better. That is basically the argument for Jon Rahm. Joe, we've been tracking this. This has been happening week in and week out. Someone gets a very early investment with 30 minutes to go, and then we don't know what happens after this. A lot of times it stays there, or maybe in the last minute we'll see it jump up by people who just can't resist. I mean, this is already off to an incredibly hot start for Jon Rahm.
Absolutely. Yeah. You already see that him clearing his fair value projection. Obviously, the number one pre-rank carries some weight there. But like you mentioned, we see it all the time, right? Someone jumps out early and places those bids in and just kind of secures that spot. And people your eyes tend to look elsewhere, right? You want to find value that hasn't quite gotten to that price point yet. And he could just kind of linger there in the high 9s, low 10s as we get to 9 p.m. And as people get closer and closer to him, the more I like Jon Rahm. Like, it all depends on the gap between him and the next player, how far apart that is dollar-wise. But he's substantially, I think, the best player in the world right now on a course that he loves. He deserves to be sort of a heavy favorite and deserves to be, priced where he is.
It's hard to argue with that statement. Let's look at the rest of the top 10. This is the pre-rank top 10. If you don't know why the pre-rank is important, it's because it breaks ties. So Jon Rahm, the number one pre-rank, he breaks the tie with everyone. So if there's a 5-way tie for 6th, who's getting the full payout? That guy, Jon Rahm, is. So it's important. The rest of the top 10, very early, Joe, but we've got a little bit of steam on Sam Burns, $5.74. Hideki Matsuyama is at $2. Basically, everyone else is at $1. They're not going to stay there, obviously. We've got a lot of time left to go. But who in this top 10 are you most excited about investing in this evening?
Okay, so I'm going to be really interested in Xander Schauffele's price. I like his chances a lot this week. Obviously, the local narratives, but really what's more important to me is he had the best scoring average last year on the South Course. If you take those 3 rounds and you put them together, he would have won the event. He just wasn't able to go low enough like Rahm did on the North. But at the same token, he's something's up with him at this place. The one that I'm most interested in and most intrigued by is Dustin Johnson. Because what do we really do here with DJ? Seems like forever since we've seen him. He hasn't played this event a whole lot, so not a lot of history, but it seems like a place tailor-made for his skill set.
I'm probably more excited about Dustin Johnson than most. We are at an interesting point. If you look at his outright number, it's basically the longest that he has been in a year, and he is still an unbelievable putter. He is still plenty of kind of space for him to improve and get back to being an absolute top tier golfer. I'm trying to just click through his career IPO prices. Let's see here. So the last time we saw Dustin Johnson was the CJ Cup at Summit, $8.59. Before that, Tour Championship, $733, $688, $705, $754. There has not recently been a super positive sentiment on Dustin Johnson. You think he's going to kind of live in that similar range here this evening?
Yeah, I do. And I'm very intrigued by it as well. I'm excited to see what he does. I'm excited to see him play. I think that he kind of has potentially an unfair knock on him that when he goes into off-season mode, maybe he's not as hard of a worker and he's not a grinder like some of these other guys, and he's more laid back, enjoying vacation with the family, which is fine. You can do both. But he's come out and played very well early in the seasons in the past. He's won the Tournament of Champions. We've seen him win in California at Riviera and the Genesis and kind of dominate. So it's not unlike him to come out of the gates hot, especially out there in California where he putts great on POA grass on a course that demands distance and accuracy and long iron play off the tee. It just seems like a great spot for him. And I would agree that the public sentiment is maybe just unknown and sort of lukewarm on him.
Yeah, fair. The sixth pre-ranked golfer is arguably the most disappointing golfer in Jock Market history. Wow, that's a pretty big statement. But it's Bryson DeChambeau. And the reason I say that is basically this right here. He's played 22 different cash markets. He's been a loser in 16 of them. Now that it includes a victory, right, at the API, and he is still a loser on average, about 8.7%. And now, Joe, he goes to a golf course that for 64 holes last summer, he looked like he was about to hoist a U.S. Open trophy before things went very, very sideways. How in the world do we reconcile Bryson DeChambeau this week?
Yeah, this graphic you have right now, I think, is a great illustration of this is Bryson, right? He's boom or bust. He's Mr. Volatility. And I think you've made the point before that this is kind of by design. When he changed his body, when he changed his swing, when he changed his entire approach to the game of golf, I think that he had this in mind, that there were going to be courses that were set up where he has a massive advantage and he can leverage that separation that we talked about earlier with Rahm, where it doesn't matter where, if he's coming in from the rough, if he's coming in with 8-iron and you're coming in with 5-iron, the surface area of the green is so much bigger for him. Even though it's the same size green, it's much bigger landing area for an 8-iron than it is a 5-iron. This is why he changed his game. I think that he's boom or bust. Do you have any concerns? I know that he played great in that U.S. Open. Do you have any concerns with the two previous missed cuts here? Or was that just, I mean, it was a totally different animal then, right?
I just have a lot of so the thing with especially the South course is that it's probably a slightly bit more risk reward than the average PGA Tour course. And when you get risk reward, you get really low scores and you get really high scores because it sometimes things go like, you have 6 risk reward shots. If you're on the wrong end of 6, you shoot a high score. If you're on the right end of 6, you shoot a low score. Yeah. And Bryson is that, but every shot, like he is that by design. That's the
that for 72
point.
Holes, right?
Right. So it's really hard to be like, holy crap. It's like volatility multiplied by volatility. So it's everything is scary. And I do worry that his around the green play has been hemorrhaging strokes. And that's something that's probably going to come into play this week. Austin in the chat, it's a really smart comment. He says, imagine the worst guy is only an 8% loss. And he's not wrong, right? So what I did is I went to, the stats here on RickRunGood.com, which you can go check out. And I just sorted the history of cash markets. And I sorted by average IPO, the most expensive golfers. And the first one with a career loss is Dustin Johnson. He's down $2.30 or 2.36%. Bryson's down 8.7%. And then I guess maybe Webb Simpson has been the worst Jock Market player because he's got the worst average ROI, about a -17, with basically the highest IPO over $8. So maybe it's Webb and Bryson that have been the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, well, like you mentioned earlier, in terms of the other markets in the world right now, people be praying for an 8% deficit over the last month. So not all bad. You see the spikes in there. You just got to catch them at the right time. And I do think this is a proper setup for the way that he has constructed his body and his game. Are you of that mindset as well, where smaller fairways, harder to hit?
Oh, yes.
Advantage Bryson, right?
Oh, the smaller the fairway, the thicker the rough, the bigger the edge for Bryson.
Yeah.
It is when everyone plays out of the rough, Bryson wins. Matthew Wolff wins. I mean, the rest of his game, that's a different question. But like that, yes, that is 1,000,000,000% the key. Either everyone hits the fairway or no one hits the fairway. That is when Bryson is best, because he's going to be longer than everybody. And then the thicker the rough is just, and not
a lot of dog legs. Like these holes, while the fairways on the overhead shots that they do of like the hang gliders, the fairways look like strips of bacon out there because they're super thin. But the rough, and you've been there, so correct me if I'm wrong, looks like you have a ton of room sort of usually on the both sides of each hole, where you can miss it by 5 yards or you can miss it by 25 yards. And you basically have a very similar shot coming in. There's not a ton of trees in your way and trouble. It's kind of just either hit the fairway or it doesn't really matter how far you miss it by.
Yeah, there's one spot where you can basically find trouble off the tee. Louis found it, coming down the stretch. Like that's the spot.
Of course he
16
did,
or 17, whatever that 16 or 17, whatever 15, whatever. That's the spot. But otherwise, you're right. If you're 5 yards off, 1 yard off, or 25 yards off, you are in some thick stuff. Let's go back to actually before I do that, let me give away a little bit more money. Satchman, you're on the board. Congratulations, $20 coming your way, Satchman. If you want to be like Satchman, you want to be a winner, go ahead and drop your Jock Market username in the chat right now. We'll draw some more this evening. Let me make sure I got my spot. Perfect. Okay, here's the big board, Joe. Here's the big board. John Rahm still up top. Tony Finau coming in, the second most expensive golfer in the Jock Market at the moment, $6.75. We are about, 15, 18 minutes away from this IPO closing. Finau will likely be popular in most formats this week, but as we say in the Jock Market, like there's a price. There's going to be a time to buy Finau, and there's going to be a time to just kind of let him go. And those who are disciplined traders, especially on guys like Tony Finau, I think are going to be in a decent position this evening.
Yeah, I've got a target on him of $7.95 tonight. So basically, as long as he's under $8, I'm pretty interested in it. I like Finau this week. Will you, while I'm sort of talking here, will you pull up his sort of Jock Market graph there? Yeah. Okay, cool. I was interested in this because Finau historically, and last year was a bit of the anomaly, but would have this reputation of not a good guy to put your outright money on, right? Because he just doesn't come through and win, but he top 10s everywhere. So last year, it looks like he didn't top 10 everywhere, and he finally got that win. So it seems like a bit of an anomaly year for him, but so consistent. He's a guy that you can usually pencil in for a top 10 here pretty easily at Torrey, given his history.
Yeah, really that end of 2020, start of 2021 is what we've seen from Tony Finau for a longer period of time. And then he got more volatile, which is good if you want to win, bad if you want to return your backers a profit each and every week. But Tony out there this week, and he is off to a very good start in the market. We talked about Xander. Okay, here's a couple of guys that I think are interesting. Justin Thomas, $6.66 a share at the moment, and Will Zalatoris, $6.02. I think we can lump them together as very, very good iron players, wedge players, approach players. The deficiency is on the putting surfaces, but these two are kind of in lockstep as of right now in terms of share price.
That's a very funny comparison that I haven't heard before, but yeah, they're both elite sort of iron players that you would see. I think that Zalatoris, without pulling up the stats, it just seems like JT has the big miss more than Zalatoris does. But they're both below average putters, and which has sort of always been their kryptonite. And the reason that they both didn't have great season in their minds last year. Zalatoris still looking for that first win, and Justin Thomas obviously had the win at the Players, but other than that, I think walked away pretty disappointed. Interesting comp. I think that Zalatoris coming in with a little better form and probably a much cheaper price is where I would lean this week.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how these guys shake out this evening. Justin Thomas in his Jock Market career has been a loser more often than he's been a winner, but with those pop weeks is about an 11% return on your investment if he's been a part of your portfolio each and every week. Okay, as I continue down the board, I start to approach some interesting names. I get to Max Homa. I get to Ryan Palmer, but I get to Daniel Berger, who is being, for the first time in quite some time, Joe, very well respected in outright markets. And now we have an evening where people have to kind of put their money where their mouth is. And he's currently $5 a share. I'll give it a refresh here in a second. But Daniel Berger, I think, is going to be someone who kind of charges up this market tonight.
Very popular. And I think that the sports books are catching on to how good of a player he is and are just like, he's a good putter, but he hasn't been putting well. So I feel like when that comes back, his iron play is on such a good run right now that he sets up really nicely. He hits short irons well. He hits long irons well. He gives himself a ton of good birdie looks, which is kind of funny because he doesn't have the most picturesque swing. He's playing like a 6-year-old set of irons, and he just kind of hits this low bullet cut in there, but it's super consistent. He knows exactly where it's going to go. He knows the exact distance, and he's spot on right now. So he hasn't been able, particularly in the Hawaii swing, to roll in enough putts, but he's returning you 10.86% on average. So he's been a great player in Jock Market. You see there 13 of sort of the 24 times he's made you money as well. I think this is a good setup for him again.
We are about 10, 15 minutes away from this IPO closing. I want to pick your brain on 3 guys who were very disappointing last week. I'll pull up their prices, but the 3 guys are Matthew Wolff, Corey Connors, and Taylor Gooch. They all missed the cut last week. The Wolf stuff got me good, but I was able to avoid most of the other guys. So Corey Connors is still, and I'll refresh this, $1 a share. That's obviously going to change. Taylor Gooch and Matthew Wolff. Wolff also $1 a share. And Taylor Gooch is $2.01. That will obviously change, Joe, but if you had to kind of rank these guys, assess them coming off of some fairly ugly missed cuts and now going to Torrey Pines, how would you do so?
I don't mind going to Wolff this week. I was off of it last week. I think that he's got a big year in store. Look, he kind of goes with the start, right? He's a very, I don't know the right word for it, but like emotional player maybe is the word for it. So if he starts out really hot, he's going to find himself in contention like he did last year at the US Open, which came basically out of nowhere, where he started himself hot and all of a sudden got his confidence back. He started out horribly last week, got a couple of bad breaks, and was basically out of the tournament by the turn. I think he can turn the page. All indications from his camp is that he's in a great spot mentally and physically. The swing looks great. I think this is a course where he can really take advantage of his length off the tee. I believe he's the second longest player after Bryson. Still a guy who led the PGA Tour in scoring average throughout the fall. I think there's a lot of upside there and maybe enough burned people last week to keep the price down.
Yeah, there certainly is going to be some polarized opinions on Matthew Wolff this week. How about Connors and Gooch? Because even as an investor of Wolff last week, I wasn't really surprised when he missed the cut. We knew it was going to be volatile. He's 22 years old or whatever he is. That's what happens, especially with the type of swing that he runs out there with every single week. But Gooch and Connors missing the cut was like the horror right to the chest. I can't even believe it. So how do we start to bounce back on these guys? Are they worth it, or are we going to play the old wait and see game?
It's going to depend on price for me, Rick. Again, sort of wait and see game, but both terrific ball strikers. Both can hit a long iron shot really well. Both are currently in pretty good form. Look at those numbers from Corey Connors. This is a guy without really breaking through, right, and getting that victory. He's still able to see those massive returns.
That's pretty
very
crazy.
Steady
actually,
on the payout too. Like the floor, with the exception of last week and a couple others, is relatively low on Connors with a lot of upside if he can putt well. there's so many good players in the field this week. Is this a spot where he breaks through? I feel less inclined to think so on him than I would on a guy like Gooch or Wolf.
That might be the best ROI. I'm trying to just look at this of like someone who's like generally that expensive who hasn't won. Kokrak's won a couple of times. He's $5.54 a share. That might be, I'll have to deep dive that, but wow. Okay. Pretty good on Corey Connors. Here's Gooch. I'll pull up Gooch here for just 1 second because, I think it's going to be really interesting how people treat Gooch, right? He had an awesome fall. Is he a fall player? Or is he a guy that's going to contend more regularly? And I think we're going to learn that. The start of 2022 hasn't been great, but this is another very interesting storyline for me this year.
Same with me. There's sort of this tier of players that, and I'm not sure which one he's in. Like, is he borderline elite where he can show up anywhere and win? Or is he in the tier players that are going to have a 2-month, a year run of form and then be a mid-level, sporadic missing cuts type of player? So has that clock sort of expired, or has he turned the corner into becoming sort of fringe elite in this 35 to 1 number where he finds a comfort zone? I think this next couple of weeks will kind of tell the story there.
Fair enough. Okay, we are now by my clock at 8:51 p.m. Eastern time. So we're just a couple minutes away from letting Joe go to do his thing. And then this IPO is going to close in about 7 to 9 minutes or so. So things are going to get pretty spicy. But let me give you one more look here at the top 10 on the board, Joe, because we've got one guy really lagging behind. And it's maybe not a name I would have expected. It's Scotty Scheffler. Now, he was very, very popular last week. He finished T25. I don't think that's a huge disappointment, but currently sitting at $3 a share, the least expensive golfer in the top 10 of the pre-rank. Is everyone just forgetting about Scotty Scheffler and moving on?
It feels that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't heard his name mentioned really once this week. Obviously didn't get himself into the Tournament of Champions. Kind of funny how he made the cut last week with a couple of bomb putts late to sort of sneak his way in there.
He chipped in and then made a putt on 18 to get in.
How did he play on Sunday?
He must have played better because he made the cut on the number and then finished T25. So I'm imagining, without pulling it up, I imagine he gained strokes on the field.
So talented, was probably, I think, for a lot of people that maybe a casual golf fan, left very impressed with him, maybe more than anybody at the Ryder Cup with how he was able to perform. So super talented player, right? Should be great with a long iron. I like him in tough, difficult tests. He seems to be all around pretty solid. And you see there he's returning you on average with a couple of big spikes through the fall. So just because we haven't seen him in a little bit of time, maybe you can catch him on a good price tonight.
Shot a 67 on Sunday, his best round of the week, and moved up 34 spots, did Scotty Scheffler. So pretty impressive stuff around a not so easy stadium course. All right, Joe, I think it's about that time. We got to let you go. I was late last week, but it's 8:53. This is the time where Joe goes and does his bidding. How many golfers are you shooting for? What would be the ideal number of golfers in your portfolio tonight?
I'm going to say 7. 7 is that sweet spot that I'm looking for. If I get a couple more, I won't be too upset given the prices.
All right, fair enough. 7 is the number that Joe's going for, but things can get crazy as they will in the next few minutes. So if you've never been a part of this part of the IPO, here's what is about to happen. We are about 4 minutes away from us entering a 90-second window. That generally happens at 8:57. Then in that 90-second window, the IPO can close at any time. It's randomized. That way we don't have a bunch of people writing bots and scripts to get everything in a half a second before this thing locks. It's actually pretty smart to do it that way. So I will take you the rest of the way, and we'll keep a close eye on the big board, which is destined to change constantly. Jon Rahm has snapped through the $10 mark. Probably no surprise. He was $11.91 last week. He has been over $10 in 7 of his last 8 cash markets. He's done it again. If you're a buyer at 10-13, you're asking Jon Rahm to finish basically 11th or better. That is the fair value position for Jon Rahm. Then huge gap to Justin Thomas at $7.88. Nearly, what is that, $2.50 indifference. And then there's just guys stacking up behind Jon Rahm. Xander Schauffele, Tony Finau, Daniel Berger, Bryson DeChambeau, Dustin Johnson, and the aforementioned Justin Thomas are all over $7, but still multiple dollars away from Jon Rahm. One of the most interesting kind of subplots to this cash market is who is that number 2 golfer going to be? Who does number 2 work for? Will it be Xander Schauffele? Will it be, you were thinking it, it would be Justin Thomas? Could it be Daniel Berger, who is now up to $7.11? He's your 15th pre-ranked golfer. So we're seeing movement in that second position, that next tier. That's where we see Hideki Matsuyama. It's where we see Sam Burns. It's where we see our winner from 2 years ago, Mark Leishman, $6.25, and there it is. There's your big bump on Scotty Scheffler. He's now $6.25 a share. That makes a lot more sense. A couple of guys that have name value. How about Brooks Koepka? $5.50 per share. That is asking Brooks to finish about 31st or better. Brooks Koepka, I've heard of him. Max Homa, $5.25. Corey Connors, $5.02 a share. So we are seeing some bigger names, some guys that we've been investing in over the course of the past couple of years, lagging behind early in this Jock Market IPO for the Farmers Insurance Open. By my clock, it's 8:56 p.m. on the East Coast. So we are just moments away from entering that randomized period. We need a cool name for that period. We'll have to think of something. And Jon Rahm continues to extend. Jon Rahm now $10.50. Remember, he owns the record for the most expensive golfer in Jock Market history, $12.51 a share at Waste Management. $11.91 last week. That was the second most expensive he's ever been. Will we see Jon Rahm try to tackle that record tonight? We'll see. Course record is certainly good. A little bit of movement on Tony Finau. He's now the third most expensive golfer. Let's go down the board here because there's certainly plenty of value sub $4. Hudson Swafford, coming off his victory last week, is $3.56 a share. Joseph Bramlett has made both cuts he's played at Torrey Pines. He's a bomber. Played well last week, played well the week before, $3.58. We'll see if there's any movement on him. I'm going to go to the second page, see if I can find some penny stocks here before I give this one more refresh. Can you stomach Ricky Fowler? If so, it'll cost you $3.01 per share. We're now in that time period. We're now in that random period. This IPO can close at any moment, anytime in the next 90 seconds or so, and obviously some of those have expired. Jon Rahm, since last refresh, another quarter. That's right. 1075 for Jon Rahm. Every time I refresh it, he's up another Washington. Justin Thomas has broken through and is starting to solidify himself as not only the number 2 pre-ranked golfer, but the second most expensive golfer in tonight's Jock Market, $8.39. The only golfer in the $8 range as of this moment, although Xander Schauffele is going to try to change that because he's $7.99. The San Diego kid has played here by his own estimate at least 100 times in his life. I'm going to try to give this one more refresh. Joe is furiously putting bids in. Hopefully you guys are
still live.
Okay, we are still live. Hopefully you are all outbidding Joe. And as expected, Xander Schauffele is indeed now over $8 a share, 808. Big jump for Hideki Matsuyama. Here it comes. A little late sentiment on Hideki, usually hard to come by in the Jock Market. He's now $7.50. Brooks Koepka up 75 cents, now $6.25. And Scotty Scheffler kind of hanging strong there in that mid $6 range. Bryson DeChambeau, who led the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines for basically 64 holes, $7.24 a share. People trying to figure out if they want to buy back in on the big beefy one. Let's give this one more refresh. I think I can sneak it in. We're still live, I believe.
We're still live.
We're still live. 8:58 by my clock. Jon Rahm has not moved. It's 10.75 for Jon Rahm. Xander Schauffele. Okay, here we go. We're seeing this battle for second really start to shape up right now. A penny separates Justin Thomas and Xander Schauffele, 851 and 850. Those two are battling it out to be the second most expensive golfer in this Farmers Insurance Open IPO. Here comes Sam Burns, now more expensive than Dustin Johnson. He's a long driver of the golf ball. He putts well on all surfaces, especially POA. Really good approach player. He was in the final group last year with Patrick Reed. Sam Burns catching steam late in this market. and we're going to shut it down. That'll do it. Shut it down. IPO is closed. Good, bad, or indifferent, Joe? How'd it go?
I think very good. We'll see how things shape up over, but it felt like a decent close time. I was trying. You made that comment at the very end about Burns outpricing DJ, and I went to scoop up some immediate shares of Dustin Johnson because I love Sam Burns, but that's not right, man. Not on our guy DJ.
No,
The market
I
had
agree.
closed by that point. So congrats to you if you got some DJ shares. I would happily take them off your hands.
Okay, couple of items. We'll do a couple of housekeeping items because I've got to get I got to let the big board refresh here. Let me give away a little bit of money. I believe this is an I, not an L. Justin, I believe it's I1 putt. That would make sense as the username. I1 putt. Congratulations, you're on the board. If that is not an I, if that's an L or something, Justin, send a message because I'm going to pass over that username to the guys at Jock Market. So I believe it's I1 putt. That would make more sense. Additionally, I'm going to get Joe's portfolio in a second, but there was a question in the chat that I think we should address from Matt. Joe asking, how do we short golfers? You actually have to go into your settings, right, Joe? You have to turn this feature on, and then you will have the ability to short golfers.
Yeah, Matt, let me look at it. So once the event starts, if you go back to your sort of homepage, which will look something like this, right? Your homepage. In that top right, you'll see the little person icon where you can go to your settings. Make sure that you go to user account and you can enable shorting. So it's just a little toggle that you can press over there. There's tutorials on the site. We've done one as well in terms of to how to go about that, but it's pretty self-explanatory, but certainly check out that on the tutorials page if you need a little walkthrough.
Yeah, and it goes without saying, now that it's closed, you'll be able to short golfers.
Yes, after IPO only, yeah.
Yeah, I think you might have said that, which is a good call. Okay, so I've got the big board refreshed here, but Joe, we are going to get your shares from your portfolio. Before you tell us how many did you get?
8.
8. Okay, so close to what we were shooting for this evening. Who are the lucky 8?
Xander.
Yeah, baby.
855. I believe he was third. Did he finish third or second in pricing?
Third,
right behind JT.
JT was 856, so 1 cent between them.
I had a target on Xander of $8.90. He was a little bit under that, so I like the position there. Followed by at the $7.50 range, I got 2 of them. Hideki, who I think perennially is undervalued at Jock Market. And Bryson,
we've learned that.
Shocked that Bryson wasn't higher this week. So kind of surprising there. Moving down in sort of that mid-range or the mid-cap range that we call it. Joaquin Niemann, I thought was a pretty good price this week, $5.09. Keegan Bradley, who has a great track record around Torrey Pines. Remember, we're not asking him to win. We're asking him to make the cut, Keegan, and play well through the weekend. You've probably got a bit top 30 or so to pay that back. Brant Snedeker, couple of time champion here. Recent form has not been terrible, so I'm going to take a little bit of flyer him right under the $4 mark. And then my 2, I guess, penny stocks, as you could say, are long-hitting young rookies. Taylor Pendrith and Sahith Theegala are both the 2 guys that I went there. Hopefully they can leverage their distance off the tee this week and hit enough greens to make it pay off.
Sahith, Pendrith, Snedeker, Bradley, Niemann, Bryson, Hideki, and Xander Schauffele rounds out the portfolio for Joe. Let us know who you got in your portfolio. Drop it in the chat. And this is your last opportunity to get your Jock Market username in the chat because I'm going to draw a little bit more money here in just 1 second. Okay, time to reveal the big board, the final big board. Absolutely no surprise that John Rahm went for 1075. Joe, it is probably one of the more fair prices we've seen on him recently. He's going to have to finish 10th or better to return a profit, but it did not get out of hand on John Rahm tonight.
No, it did not. Yeah, 10th or better. I think that's right about right. What's kind of surprising here is only 3 guys cleared $8, which I don't know how many times that happened, especially with a lot of big names there. I mean, there were 6 guys that were fair value or pre-ranked above that $8 threshold. It looks like DJ, Hideki, and Bryson all kind of sat there in the $7.50 range, about 50 cents under where they were projected to go. So kind of interesting that the market seems to be congregating a bit more to the middle here in the beef.
Yeah, good point. There's only 3 golfers over $7 or $8, I guess. Is what
$8,
it is.
yeah.
Yeah. Justin Thomas, 856, Xander Schauffele, 855. Talked about them. And then they just pile up. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 golfers in the $7 range. It's Finau, it's Burns, Dustin Johnson, Hideki, Bryson, Berger, Scheffler, Sung J M. Any issues with how this tier kind of played itself out?
No, none at all. I like Hideki the best in that range. I think coming off the recent win, great form at Torrey as well. So was a bit shocked at that price. Burns felt a little bit high for me going above those, the 3 big ones there in DJ, Hideki, Bryson. So that one felt a little bit off. Finau went above all 3 of those guys as well, who I think may possess a little bit more win equity. So, but you can't argue with the current form of Burns, right?
No, you cannot. How about Brooks Koepka, 629, Jordan Spieth, 595. These guys, this is interesting. Outright markets fluctuate very quickly on Brooks Koepka, right?
Yeah,
They let him slide, right? Especially for non-major championships, they let him slide. It took a while after like 2015, 16, 17, Jordan Spieth, it took a long time for outright markets to finally like let him go when he was playing poorly. But now he seems to be bouncing all over the place, which I guess is, man, it's just a lot of ebbs and flows for these 2 guys.
Yeah, Brooks is one of those guys, you're right, who seems to have a sliding scale of, they'll push him to 50 to 1 in some events. I had like a 56 to 1 at the Waste last year when he won. But then after he wins and we're coming up on a big tournament, they'll slide him to like 12 to 1 to win the Masters.
He's 18 to 1 to win the Masters right now. He's 14 to 1 to win the US Open right now. How can he be like 40 or 50 to 1 this week?
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I took him 40 to 1 this week. I had a bid on him tonight at $6 and I think like 13 cents or something like that. So I just got outbid late on Brooks. Look, he's volatile. The current form isn't great. You look at any sort of stat model and he's not going to appear to be doing much well, but you put him on a long, difficult golf course where par is a pretty good score. I like Brooks a lot more on sort of those type of setups. Matt Wolff is another one that they'll slide all over the place because they'll push him up to 100 to 1. But if he plays well and tops 5, they'll slide him down there in like the Finau range of like 30 to 1. So there's a couple of guys like that, very unique, that they will have a big scale, on sort of pros and cons with their betting numbers and sentiment.
Koepka's been a loser in 10 straight cash markets, and I bet him this week. So maybe I'm the sucker here.
I bet him too, man. Let's go. He's got to turn the table at some point.
All right. A couple of notables that I kind of like here. I like the upside of Lonto Griffin and Justin Rose in that mid to low $5 range. Going down a little bit further, Jason Day went for 350. So he was okay. We should do this. Jason Day, we had fair value 403. He went for 349. So he went for 50 cents cheaper than what we had him for before the start, Joe. Mav McNeely went for 60 cents more. Jordan Spieth went for, where's Jordan? $5.95. Wow, almost. We had him at $7.48 and Rahm at $9.61. So he went for $1 more. Is that, I mean, Spieth's the big difference there.
Yeah, Spieth's the big difference. So it seems like the sentiment is shared on what we said about Spieth, and there isn't a whole lot of expectations this week. Things haven't looked great the last couple of times that I've seen him. So I didn't think he looked very good at Tournament of Champions. At the Hero, which isn't going to show up in most of your, the models or recent history, he was awful. I think he was dead last at the Hero. So he was terrible that week. I don't quite know what to think of him, but I want to see him playing better if I'm going to put some dollars on him.
Fair enough. All right, let me give away some more cash. Ryan, Rosemont or Rosemount Irish, congratulations. You are on the board. And if you want more free money, use the code POWER when you deposit. That is up to a $50 deposit bonus. You, of course, can always follow Joe on Twitter at TorPix. You can always follow me at RickRunGood. Joe, this is going to be a fun one, but we are right back at it in our normal time slot for next week, which is going to be Pebble Beach, back to Wednesday, 8:15 p.m. Eastern time.
Wednesdays for the foreseeable future every week, 8:15 to 9:15. So best of luck to everyone out there this week at Torrey. We'll see you guys soon.
Goodbye and good luck. We'll see you next week.